I wish I had covered my ears that afternoon. If I had walked away instead of listening, I would have remained an ordinary maid. Instead, I became the only person who knew a secret powerful enough to destroy 2 lives. My name is Amina. I was 28 years old, and I worked as a live-in maid for Madame Evelyn, one of the wealthiest women in our town. Her mansion stood on a quiet hill surrounded by tall palm trees. From the outside, it looked like a peaceful home. Inside, it hid more lies than I could ever imagine. People admired Madame Evelyn. She donated to charities, smiled for cameras, and spoke kindly in public. But behind closed doors, she was a completely different person. I had worked for her for almost 4 years. I cleaned the house, prepared meals, watered the flowers, and sometimes looked after her little daughter, Grace. Grace was the only reason I stayed. She treated me like family. Amina, she would say with a smile, when I grow up, I'll build you a beautiful house. I would laugh. You should first finish your homework. She would giggle and hug me. Those moments made all the insults from her mother easier to bear. Madame Evelyn never called me by my name. Girl. Lazy woman. Worthless maid. Those were the names she preferred. Still, I endured everything because my younger brother depended on the money I earned for school. Then one rainy evening, everything changed. Madame Evelyn's best friend, Linda, arrived unexpectedly. The 2 women rarely met at home. Whenever they wanted privacy, they usually went to expensive restaurants. So when Madame Evelyn told me, Amina, prepare tea and don't disturb us, I immediately sensed something unusual. I carried the tray upstairs. The study door was slightly open. As I reached for the handle, I heard my own name. Amina doesn't suspect anything, Linda whispered. My heartbeat froze. I carefully placed the tray beside the wall and remained still. Madame Evelyn laughed softly. She's too loyal. She'll never question me. Loyal? Question what? Linda sighed. I still think we're taking a huge risk. Madame Evelyn's voice became cold. We have no choice. If Daniel discovers the truth, everything we've built will disappear. Daniel. That was Madame Evelyn's husband. A respected businessman who spent weeks traveling across Africa managing his companies. Linda lowered her voice. Sometimes I feel guilty. Madame Evelyn replied without hesitation. Guilt doesn't pay bills. Silence. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. When Daniel returns next month, we'll finally move the money. Money? What money? Linda hesitated. And the accident? Madame Evelyn answered calmly. No one will ever connect it to us. My hand started shaking. Accident? Connect what? I leaned slightly closer. Then. Crash. The empty teacup slipped from the tray and shattered across the marble floor. Both women stopped talking instantly. The study door flew open. Madame Evelyn stared directly at me. Amina. Her smile disappeared. How much did you hear? I only came with your tea. She stepped closer. Her eyes looked colder than I had ever seen. Tell me exactly what you heard. I swear, nothing. Linda looked terrified. I told you someone would overhear us. Madame Evelyn grabbed my wrist so tightly it hurt. If you value your job. She leaned toward my face. Forget today ever happened. I nodded quickly. Yes, madam. She released me. Clean the mess. I bent down to collect the broken pieces, but my heart refused to calm down. Something terrible was happening inside this house. And somehow, I had become part of it. That night I couldn't sleep. The conversation echoed inside my head. Move the money. The accident. Daniel must never know. Around midnight I got up for water. As I walked past the office downstairs, I noticed light under the door. Madame Evelyn was inside. She was speaking on the phone. No, the maid heard something. A long pause. I'll handle her. Another pause. If she becomes a problem. She stopped speaking. Then quietly said, "We know what to do." A chill ran through my entire body. She wasn't talking about firing me. She was talking about silencing me forever. I hurried back to my room without making a sound. For the first time since joining that house, I locked my bedroom door. The next morning, Madame Evelyn acted as though nothing had happened. She smiled. Amina. It was the first time she had called me by my real name in months. Take Grace to school today. Her kindness frightened me more than her insults ever had. As Grace and I drove away, she suddenly looked at me. Auntie Amina. Yes? Why was Mommy crying last night? I nearly stopped walking. Crying? Grace nodded. I heard Aunt Linda say. She looked around before whispering. Daddy must never know who my real father is. My heart almost stopped. The secret I had overheard wasn't just about money. It was much bigger. And I had the terrifying feeling that the worst was still waiting for me. I couldn't breathe after Grace whispered those words. Daddy must never know who my real father is. She skipped ahead toward her classroom as if she had said nothing unusual. I stood there frozen. Daniel wasn't Grace's biological father? Suddenly every strange conversation I had overheard made more sense, yet it also raised 100 new questions. When we returned home, I acted as naturally as I could. Madame Evelyn watched me closely throughout the day. During lunch she smiled and asked, Amina, you've been very quiet. Is something bothering you? I forced a smile. No, madam. But deep inside, I knew she no longer trusted me. That evening, while cleaning Daniel's home office, I noticed something unusual. One drawer was slightly open. Inside lay several bank documents. As I tried to close it, an envelope slipped onto the floor. I picked it up. Written across the front were the words, Private DNA report. My hands trembled. I knew I shouldn't open it. But after everything I had heard, I couldn't stop myself. Inside was a laboratory report. The result was clear. Daniel was not Grace's biological father. I quickly returned everything exactly as I had found it. My heart pounded so loudly I thought someone would hear it. That night, another surprise arrived. Daniel returned home 2 weeks earlier than expected. Grace ran into his arms. Daddy. He lifted her and laughed. I missed my princess. Watching them together broke my heart. He loved that little girl with everything he had. Meanwhile, Madame Evelyn looked nervous for the first time since I'd known her. Later that night, I carried coffee into the living room. Daniel smiled kindly. Thank you, Amina. Madame Evelyn interrupted. You may go. Her voice was sharp. As I walked away, I heard Daniel say, Evelyn, why do you look so worried? I'm just tired. She was lying. And I knew it. The next afternoon, Linda came again. This time they met in the backyard. I stayed inside, pretending to wash dishes, while the kitchen window remained slightly open. Linda whispered urgently. Daniel came back too early. I know. What about the transfer? We'll finish it tomorrow. And Amina? Madame Evelyn's voice turned cold. She'll leave this house before the weekend. Linda looked confused. Fire her? Madame Evelyn slowly shook her head. No. Those 2 letters filled me with terror. That night I packed a small bag. If something happened, I wanted to be ready to run. But before dawn, someone knocked softly on my bedroom door. I almost screamed. Amina. It was Daniel. I opened the door carefully. He looked exhausted. I need to ask you something. I remained silent. He lowered his voice. Have you noticed anything strange lately? I froze. If I told him everything and he didn't believe me, Madame Evelyn would destroy my life. But if I stayed silent, an innocent man might lose everything. He looked into my eyes. You've always been honest with me. That sentence broke my fear. I whispered. Sir, I think someone is stealing from you. His face changed instantly. What? I don't know everything. But please don't tell Madam we spoke. He nodded. I promise. The following day, Daniel secretly installed tiny recording devices in his office and study. Only he and I knew. For 2 days. Nothing happened. Then came the biggest shock of all. Late Friday evening, Madame Evelyn invited Linda over again. Daniel pretended he had left for another business trip. Instead, he hid inside the guest house across the compound, watching everything through the security cameras. Linda placed several files on the table. It's all here. Madame Evelyn smiled. Once these accounts are emptied, Daniel will believe the company failed. Linda hesitated. And the DNA report? Madame Evelyn laughed. He'll never see it. She opened the fireplace and threw the envelope into the flames. Then she said words that made everyone listening fall silent. I should have left Daniel years ago. Linda stared at her. So why didn't you? Because a rich husband is easier than a poor lover. Daniel heard every single word. His hands shook. Tears filled his eyes. The man who had trusted his wife completely had just watched her destroy 20 years of marriage with one cruel sentence. But the biggest twist was still waiting. Linda suddenly looked frightened. Evelyn, there's something you don't know. What? I've been recording every conversation we've had. Madame Evelyn's smile disappeared. What? Linda pulled out her phone. If you ever try to blame everything on me, I'll give these recordings to Daniel. For a few seconds, neither woman spoke. Their partnership had turned into blackmail. And neither of them trusted the other anymore. Outside, Daniel looked at me. He whispered. It's over. But I had a feeling. The final confrontation would change all of our lives forever. The next morning, the mansion felt strangely quiet. No one smiled. No one spoke. It was the calm before the storm. Daniel looked at me and said quietly, Amina, today, I need you to stay strong. I nodded, even though my hands were trembling. I will, sir. Around noon, Madame Evelyn called everyone into the main living room. She looked confident, dressed in an expensive white outfit as if she were about to attend a celebration instead of destroying another person's life. Linda sat beside her, forcing a nervous smile. Grace was upstairs with her nanny, completely unaware that her family was about to fall apart. Madame Evelyn cleared her throat. Daniel, I have something important to discuss. Daniel calmly sat down. So do I. She smiled, pretending to be innocent. The company has suffered heavy losses. I think we should move the remaining money into a safer account. Daniel simply replied. Really? Yes. And whose account would that be? For the first time, she hesitated. Our family account. Daniel slowly placed a folder on the table. I already know about the secret accounts. Her face turned pale. What are you talking about? He opened the folder. Inside were printed bank records, screenshots, and recordings. I know every transfer. I know every lie. And I know every conversation. Linda's eyes widened. Madame Evelyn suddenly stood up. Someone is lying to you. Daniel looked directly into her eyes. No. You lied to me. He pressed a button on his phone. The room filled with Madame Evelyn's own recorded voice. A rich husband is easier than a poor lover. Then another recording played. He'll never see the DNA report. Then another. We'll move the money before Daniel finds out. Silence. Complete silence. Madame Evelyn's confidence disappeared in seconds. She looked at Linda. You recorded me? Linda stood up. You were planning to blame everything on me. I had to protect myself. You betrayed me first. The two women began shouting at each other. Years of fake friendship collapsed in front of everyone. Daniel didn't interrupt. He simply watched. Finally he said, So, who is Grace's biological father? The room became deadly quiet. Madame Evelyn lowered her head. Tears rolled down her cheeks. It was. She couldn't finish. Linda whispered. Michael. Daniel frowned. My former business partner? Linda nodded. Yes. Daniel closed his eyes. Years of memories flashed across his face. The man he had trusted in business. The wife he had trusted with his heart. Both had betrayed him. After several long seconds, he spoke calmly. I don't blame Grace. She is innocent. I will always love her. Those words made me cry. Even after learning the painful truth. His first concern was his daughter. But Madame Evelyn wasn't finished. Desperate, she pointed at me. This maid started everything. If she hadn't been spying. Daniel interrupted sharply. No. You started everything the day you chose lies over honesty. She had no answer. Just then, there was another knock at the front door. Two financial investigators walked inside. Behind them were police officers. Daniel had already reported the stolen company funds after gathering enough evidence. One investigator said, Mrs. Evelyn, we have evidence of fraud, forgery, and illegal transfer of company assets. Another officer turned to Linda. You'll need to come with us as well. Linda burst into tears. Madame Evelyn tried to argue. You can't arrest me. But the evidence was overwhelming. Within minutes, both women were escorted out of the mansion. As they walked past me, Madame Evelyn stopped. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I trusted you. For the first time in 4 years, I answered without fear. No, madam. You only trusted my silence. She lowered her head and walked away. Weeks later, the investigation uncovered everything. Millions had been secretly moved over several years. Several fake business contracts had been created. The court ordered the stolen money to be recovered. Linda accepted a plea agreement after confessing. Madame Evelyn received a much harsher sentence because she had planned the entire scheme. As for Daniel, he sold the mansion. It carries too many painful memories, he told me. Before leaving, he handed me an envelope. Inside was enough money for my younger brother to finish university and for me to start a small catering business. I immediately tried to refuse. I was only doing what was right. He smiled. You didn't just protect my business. You protected the truth. Months later, my catering business became successful. For the first time in my life, I was my own boss. One afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Grace. She ran toward me with the same bright smile she had always worn. Auntie Amina. She hugged me tightly. I missed you. Daniel stood behind her. I promised she'd always know the people who truly loved her. I smiled through tears. Some families are connected by blood. Others are connected by honesty, sacrifice, and love. Looking back, I often think about that rainy afternoon when I accidentally overheard a secret. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. I was wrong. Sometimes, the truth enters your life quietly. Only to save it. And in the end, I learned an old African saying my grandmother loved. No matter how long the night hides the path, the sunrise always reveals the footprints. And that day, the truth finally found its light.